Horowitz, Democratic consultant, I believe is around the corner. Rob, thanks for taking the time to come in this week. Take a little step a little closer here.
This way.
And we'll talk about everything that's been going on this week.
Sure.
And we have to start with Florida. We've seen an outcry of the results of what we saw down there. And of course, people saying, don't need thoughts and prayers, need action. And this is just one of many school shootings, unfortunately, that we continue to see. What's the prospect from your perspective on anything happening?
I think in the short term, there isn't a great prospect. I went and looked back in 2013. Senator Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia, conservative Republican, Pat Toomey from Pennsylvania, with the Manchin, and this wasn't very far after Sandy Hook. They put in the Manchin-Toomey amendment or bill, which would have just required a universal background check. Didn't take anyone's gun away, and that didn't get enough votes in the U.S. Senate. It got a majority, but it didn't get to 60. And if anything, the climate's gotten worse for common sense gun legislation. You'd have to see some electoral change, and you'd also have to see the common sense gun control folks get more traction on the ground, I think.
And is there potential for this to happen? We're looking at 18, we're looking at midterms. What do you think the prospect is for this election year?
It's possible because the bigger problem's in the House. And you could see, you can't tell yet, it's too early, and the economy is improving. Election held today, Democrats would probably take the House. Election held in November, who knows?
A lot of water between here and there. I mean, what are the conversations you've had with elected officials and folks in Democratic circles, again, since this latest tragedy?
I think there isn't a lot of optimism short term about the kinds of changes, and you can even sort of see the reaction. For example, Speaker Paul Ryan saying, and sort of a typical reaction, which is, it's inappropriate to talk about politics today, but then there's never a day where it is appropriate to talk about the gun stuff. So it's a stalling mechanism. And when a different kind of tragedy happens, or a different kind of, it's a terrorism activity and people die, it's never then too early to talk about politics.
So tell viewers here, as we're here in the studio, your thoughts on what we've heard about the FBI, and basically FBI admitting that they fell down here. What happens now?
In terms of the FBI falling down on this one? Well, the good thing is what the FBI did is what the Trump administration should learn how to do overall, which is when you make a mistake, you admit it. Right
they
away.
Admitted it. They put the statement out that...
They put the statements out, and just as the Air Force did, I believe it was the Air Force when they didn't transmit the information the last time there was a tragedy. So the more people at least are going to admit it. I think when you admit a mistake, it's still a disturbing mistake, people are much more willing to sort of be forgiving. So I think the FBI handled it perfectly.
Well, that was interesting to see, and again, such a heartbreaking tragedy in Florida and the reaction to it. And Democratic standpoint from Rob Horowitz, I want to ask you about what's taking place on the Hill in terms of immigration this week and what we saw with the Senate.
It's pretty discouraging, but there still might be a chance for a compromise. You saw 3 bills go down. The one that went down the biggest actually was the Trump administration proposal that went down 60-39. One bill got a majority. Still seems to me it may not happen short term. 90% of the country wants the Dreamers to have a path at least to legalization, if not to citizenship. Most people are for border security. If you would keep it to those two things, you could get a compromise.
This is sort of keep it simple, stupid?
Exactly. Once you get into trying to reduce legal immigration, which is the other piece of the thing the Trump administration is trying to do, and once you get into trying to change the visa lottery, which essentially makes our immigration more diverse, that's a much more complicated, much more difficult task. And I think both of those policies are well advised by that. But however you ever feel about the policy, if you're looking on a deadline, make it simple. Trump administration, I'm not sure they want an agreement here. I mean, they weighed in very heavily against the bipartisan Lindsey Graham proposal with Senator Durbin, and that's sort of Steve Miller's advice, who's a very hardline immigration person. I think that's bad political advice. I think if you could get a deal, it would be better for Trump. At some point, if you're at 40% approval, 42% approval, with a roaring economy, that's you have to decide to expand the people that are supporting you, not just hold on to them, because holding on to them doesn't get you a majority.
So let's stay at the national level before we tack back to local politics. The news today, Mueller and the 13 indictments of Russians. I mean, did we see this coming? There's been such a focus on the White House and members of the administration. All of a sudden, we're pulling Russians in. You know, what's the response been to this today?
I think the amazing thing about the Mueller investigation with all the leaks going on, and by the way, most of the leaks coming out of the White House. It's
Yes.
the leakiest White House I can ever remember. Even usually when there's lots of dysfunction, there's leaks. The Clinton White House was maybe half as many leaks. This was pretty dysfunctional.
This is the leakiest administration.
This would be great to be in D.C. getting all those leaks, because that's what's going on.
I'm not writing the fire of the fury though, but anyhow. But is it surprising how no one knew this was coming?
After no one knew when the Flynn indictment was coming, no one came when he was cooperating. The Mueller plays it close to the vest, so I don't think that's a surprise. I think we really don't know exactly what he's doing, and that's good. He's keeping it all secret. But it's a very, very important indictment, and it puts to rest, just for the national interest, whatever is going to happen in terms of collusion and the rest of it. It should put to rest. It may not on Fox News from 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. when they're out there where the buses don't run, but it mainly puts to rest any doubt about the fact that the Russians were very involved. It is a very specific indictment. 13 Russians, 3 companies. We're talking about making up American identities. We're talking about millions of dollars spent on social media and ads. It's a very expansive indictment, and the unwitting cooperation of at least 3 Trump associates. No one's saying they did it intentionally, at least yet. And so in terms of just, because the main thing for the country isn't necessarily what happens in terms of the whole moral inquiry going backwards, is what's going to happen in the 2018 elections. You had the 4 national security folks, FBI director, director of national intelligence, CIA director, etc., on the Hill the other day, all Trump appointees, by the way, all saying the Russians are still meddling and that they meddled in 2016. The only person who still hasn't gotten the memo, and he kind of half got it today, is the president. So that's what we got to be focused on, is because there were probes this time into our election systems in the states. No change of votes, but probes. But we're still not doing nearly enough to harden election security. Imagine if the Russians had changed some votes. Actually, so if this can just take that argument off the table and say, now we know the Russians are attempting to influence our elections, the evidence is overwhelming, then we could get a bipartisan solution, at least going forward, about how we're going to protect the integrity of our elections and our democracy.
Do you think we'll see, we just, again, heard of the indictments, here we are, it's February, election season will sort of really heat up in earnest come the summertime. We don't know how quickly or not quickly. Do you think this will sway the election or what we find out from these indictments?
Will it sway the 2018 election, the indictments themselves?
No, what we find from what the ultimate results ends up being.
I think it depends on this. I think it's going to help the Democrats some, and a lot of this is the president's reaction to it. If from day one he had said yes, as opposed to saying it's a hoax, who knows, it's a 400-person man on a bed, we don't know, because you just can't admit anything that interferes. Seriously made up the fact that there's 4 million people that evidently voted illegally for Hillary Clinton. And all the illegal people that voted, every one of them voted for Hillary Clinton. Like, not one of them would have voted for Donald Trump. I mean, it's insanity. So if he had said from day one, I didn't want the help, I won the election legitimately, but this is a genuine national security crisis, this wouldn't be hurting him as much. But it's sort of, because he's in the bunker on it, and even the statement they put out today was ridiculous. Half of it was in all caps. I mean, if that's going to be your attitude, yeah, it's going to hurt.
I didn't see the all cap statement.
It's you should check it out. It's a Sarah Sanders special, but you almost, as the press secretary, you almost feel bad for her, because he's sitting there dictating it to her.
And is she putting the caps in because he's yelling? Is that, or did she just keep the caps lock on?
By mistake? Keeps it on. It's like keeping the when you ever get an email in 24-point red type. I mean, it's sort of the same thing.
The caps locks are on. Well, I want to tack from national issues to one that we've seen here locally this kind of past week unveiled. This arrangement between the Providence Democrats and Gina Raimondo's campaign. We saw it unravel a little bit when we didn't have sort of the full details, especially at the city council level, the city Democrats level. We've since seen Patrick Ward step down for other reasons. But now we see the Republicans really making an issue of this. Can governors have special relationships with the Providence City Democrats? I mean, what's your thoughts on this?
It's completely legal. And by the way, who are we going to believe on campaign finance law? Brandon Bell, the Republican chair, who's doing his job, making an issue, or the executive director of Common Cause, John Marion, who's an expert on the issue and doesn't have an axe to grind. Marion said it was legal. It is legal. Now, should we change our campaign finance system and reform it completely? Yes. Are we going to do that before November 2018? About less chance of that than the gun control thing happening. So everything is legal. He can flap his gums all he wants. He's, you know, he will score a few points. At the end of the day, she's doing nothing wrong, and there are ways to do these agreements, which candidly enable you to raise more money because the limit in Rhode Island is only $1,000, and you can raise it for party building activities and get out the vote, and it is all well within. We're not even at the edge here. This is well within the law.
It's within the law, and you see the allegations being put forth by the Republicans that just, they make it look like there's some impropriety, and then she's got control over who's staffing and who's at the city Democrats level. But should that be a concern?
Marion looked at that too, said nothing unethical. First of all, the guy's not there anymore. You still got the agreement, right? So what's the issue? I mean, he resigned, not because of this.
Not because of this.
Had nothing to do with it.
But because this was all orchestrated prior to that, prior to something coming out of left field, you know.
I could see where you could try to make some hay of it, but it doesn't work. He's a state employee, so it's a typical kind of agreement, which is very standard in these kinds of elections. So I think there's no there there. Give Bell credit for jumping up and down, making some noise and getting some headlines. He's doing his job as a party chair, but you have to remember he's a party chair with an axe to grind. The experts said there's no there there.
There's no there there. Well, speaking of what's there, what can we expect from Rob Horowitz maybe for a next column? I know it's tough because you're in the news cycle, so it's hard to predict. But what do you think we'll be looking for?
I try to wait, not just because I love to procrastinate everything, but I do try
you
to wait
want to be in the news cycle, but you want to
be in the news cycle. But as of today, I think I'll write on the Russia indictments because I think again, it's not just a partisan issue. It really is an issue about how can we come together and protect our democracy. And what happened in 2016 was an attack on our country. Trump appointments, these are not Democrats, Trump appointed people saying, national security experts, to a person saying it's still happening, they're still doing it. At the end of the day, all we have is trust in a democracy. And there's little supply of it anyway. We don't want to erode the one thing that we're mostly, besides Donald Trump, when it serves his interests, reasonably certain about, which is the elections are basically in general free and fair. We have to maintain that.
Well,
so that's what I'll probably write about, unless something else
comes up. Well, I appreciate your contributions, Rob. We appreciate when we are able to get you here into the studio to talk about all things politics, national and local. Hopefully we'll have you back in the very near future.
Thank you, Kate.
Rob Horowitz, I thank you for taking your time to come on in. I'll let you go around the corner.
Thank you.
Rob Horowitz, Democratic consultant, frequent regular contributor to Golocal Prov. Appreciate his taking the time to come back. It's been a little while, but you can read him weekly on Golocal Prov, talking about, of course, what's going on down in D.C. with the indictments of the Russians by the Mueller investigation and more. We had a packed show, starting off at 3 o'clock with Penguins. Mystic Aquarium was in the studio with Molly. I had a packed show at 4 o'clock. Had Dr. Will Bundy from the Naval War College, Tim DeChristopher, environmental activist, his documentary Bitter 70, getting rave reviews, and he'll be in East Greenwich tomorrow night, and of course Rob Horowitz. So we appreciate your tuning in. We appreciate your watching. We look forward to seeing you next week here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Wishing everyone a great weekend. I'm Golocal News Editor Kate Nagel.
Yes, that's what I was.
Kate Nagel.
Yes, that's what I was.
Kate Nagel.